The moment she said, "Open the bag now," I knew this wasn't about safety, it wasn't about law, and it definitely wasn't about truth. It was about assumption. It was a warm afternoon in the park, quiet, ordinary, the kind of day where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. And yet somehow I found myself standing there realizing I'd just been cast as the villain in somebody else's story before I'd even opened my mouth. You ever have that happen to you where you can actually feel the judgment hit you before the words do? Yeah, that happened. My friend Andre and I had just finished a routine handoff. Nothing shady, nothing rushed, just work. The kind of thing we'd done dozens of times, standing near a bench with joggers passing and kids yelling in the distance, birds hopping around like they owned the place, and then her voice cut through the air sharp as glass. "Don't move." She walked up like she'd already solved a crime, hand near her belt. Posture, stiff eyes locked on the pouch Andre was holding, not on us as people, just on that bag like it was the headline she wanted to write. "What's in it?" she asked, not curious, not polite, just demanding. And Andre tilted his head slightly and said, calm as still water, "Why do you ask?" She didn't like that you could see it in the way her jaw tightened. "Open it." No, please, no explanation, just open it like authority was supposed to replace reason. And that's when I felt that old familiar pressure in my chest. Not fear exactly, more like recognition, like, oh, I know this script, I've seen this movie before. I asked her, steady hands, visible, voice neutral, "Are we being detained?" And she frowned like I'd insulted her, like questions weren't allowed unless she asked them first. "I saw you hand something off. Looked like a drug deal." Andre didn't flinch, didn't get loud, didn't roll his eyes, just said, "I'm not consenting to a search. If you believe you have probable cause, you can state your facts." And right there, the air shifted because she realized she wasn't dealing with someone who was going to panic or babble or try to talk his way out of something he didn't do. She was dealing with someone calm, informed, and unafraid. And some people, especially when they're used to instant compliance, they don't know what to do with that. Her tone sharpened. "You don't get to tell me what to do." And she stepped closer, like proximity could replace evidence. Like getting in our space might make us fold, and people nearby started noticing a jogger slowed a couple on a bench stopped talking. You could feel the scene turning public. And that matters because once witnesses exist, the story can't be controlled as easily. She tried another angle, talking about families nearby, kids around safety concerns, all those vague words that sound official but don't actually mean anything specific. And I said quietly, "Suspicion isn't probable cause." And she shot back, "Refusing makes you look guilty," which almost made me laugh because that line gets used so often it should come printed on a cue card, refuse, and suddenly refusal becomes the crime, comply. And suddenly you've surrendered your rights. It's a lose-lose setup unless you know the rules better than the person trying to bend them. Andre just repeated, "What facts justify a search right now?" And she didn't answer because she couldn't. So instead she leaned in and said something she probably thought would push us into reacting, something ugly, something careless, something about us belonging back in whatever neighborhood we came from. And the park went quiet in that strange, heavy way where even the birds seemed to pause. Someone behind us whispered, "Did she really just say that?" And I felt heat rise in my chest, not panic, not fear, just that flash of anger that tells you someone crossed a line they can't uncross. But Andre gave the slightest shake of his head, barely noticeable, and I knew exactly what he meant. Don't give her what she wants. Don't hand her the excuse. Don't let emotion become her evidence. So I took a breath and spoke calmly. "My name is Daniel Cross, United States Protective Division." And it was like watching a balloon deflate in real time. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, her eyes shifted, the edge in her voice disappeared, and suddenly she sounded careful. "Oh, I didn't realize." And Andre muttered under his breath, "Clearly." And she stepped back just enough to create space she hadn't allowed before. "You're free to go," she said, tone softer, posture, smaller authority, shrinking now that it realized it had grabbed the wrong target. Funny thing about power, it's loud when it thinks it's safe and quiet when it realizes it's not. But she didn't leave, not right away. She hovered like she was trying to figure out how to exit without looking like she'd just lost. Then she turned slightly and keyed her radio. Speaking low, using those careful half-phrases officers use when they want guidance. Without admitting they messed up, and I caught bits of it. Suspicious exchange, refusal, possible federal, which basically translates to, "Please tell me I can keep pushing," and apparently whoever was on the other end didn't give her that permission, because when she turned back, her voice had changed completely. "Sorry for the misunderstanding." She said, "Not sorry for the assumption, not sorry for the comment, just sorry things didn't go her way." Andre nodded once and said calmly, "You demanded a search without probable cause or a warrant, just so we're clear. Not loud, not angry, just factual, like placing a document on a table so nobody can pretend it never existed." And she didn't respond. Not a word. So we walked away at a normal pace, not fast, because that looks guilty, not slow, because that looks confrontational, just steady controlled. And once we were far enough that she couldn't hear, I made a call, professional brief, factual time, location, badge number, exact wording, because documentation is stronger than outrage. Records outlive emotions. And Andre did the same, noting details like witnesses and sequence and tone, because if you don't write the story down early, someone else will rewrite it later. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, she probably drove off thinking that was the end of it. Just another encounter she could tuck away in her memory and smooth out later when she wrote her report. But 2 days after that, a formal complaint landed on her captain's desk. Not emotional, not dramatic, just structured facts, timeline statements, legal concerns, and one line highlighted like a spotlight. Derogatory remark during attempted search without probable cause. That kind of sentence makes departments sit up straight because it doesn't just suggest a mistake, it suggests liability, and liability makes supervisors pay attention fast. She got called in, asked simple questions that become impossible when you don't have real answers. What crime did you suspect? What facts justified detention? What facts justified a search? What established probable cause? And from what I heard, she said, it looked suspicious. Which is another way of saying I guessed, and guessing doesn't hold up well once body camera footage enters the room because video doesn't care about feelings, it doesn't soften tone, it doesn't edit context, it just shows what happened exactly as it happened, the posture, the words, the distance, the moment. That remark left her mouth all of it. Now, if this were a movie, she'd be fired on the spot, badge sliding across a desk, dramatic music playing, but real life doesn't work like that. Real consequences are quieter and honestly sometimes heavier. She got a formal reprimand, mandatory retraining, removal from certain patrol duties, and a permanent note in her record about improper search pressure and inappropriate language, and that kind of note doesn't disappear. It follows you to promotion reviews, performance evaluations, internal discussions. People remember it even if nobody says it out loud. The department even sent out a reminder memo afterwards saying, suspicion is not probable. Cause refusal is not justification. Consent must be voluntary. Nobody mentioned her name, but everybody knew why it went out. And for me, the real victory wasn't punishment, it wasn't revenge, it was confirmation. Written confirmation that staying calm works. That knowing your rights matters, that refusing to play the role someone assigns you can actually change the outcome. Because here's the truth, most people learn the hard way. Authority isn't always right, sometimes it's just louder. Weeks later, I talked about it at a small community workshop. Nothing dramatic, just told folks what I tell you now. Ask if you're detained. Don't consent if you don't want to keep your hands visible. Document. Everything's simple rules, but they can shift an entire situation. And as for her last, I heard she's still on the force, still wearing the badge. But once something like that gets attached to your name, people watch you differently. Supervisors double-check, partners listen closer, and the next time you say, trust me, there's a pause before anyone believes you, and honestly, that pause might be the real consequence, not suspension, not paperwork, but doubt. So I've been thinking about it ever since, about that moment in the park, about how fast assumptions can turn into accusations, and I keep coming back to the same question. Was she a bad cop, or just someone who let bias speak louder than judgment? Because depending on your answer, that says a lot about how you see power, fairness, and accountability, and I want to know what you think seriously if you'd been standing where I was that afternoon. Calm outside, fire inside. Would you have stayed quiet? Asked for a supervisor, started recording, or handled it some other way? Drop your take in the comments and tell me if you've ever lived through something like this, because stories like that, real ones, they matter more than people realize.